Reporter Simpio Makanya, and he is of course broadcasting live from the Inkosi Albert Luthuli in Durban.
Well, good afternoon to you, Pearl, and good afternoon to the viewers at home. Well, just recently, the Deputy Minister of Higher Education and Training, Mr. Mduduzi, has officially wrapped this 3-day Higher Education AIDS Conference, which was taking place here at the Durban ICC. It's Inkosi Albert Luthuli International Convention Center, and a plethora of issues that the youth raised these past 3 days, and but we'll get to that a bit later on. But just going through some of the concerns that the Minister of Health raised, such as the high infection rates of young women of HIV and AIDS, is still saying that that has not been actually being addressed adequately. He's saying he doesn't know what the problem is with regards to South Africa, with being obviously the country that is leading in terms of the number of new infections as the country, and the issues of as well keeping young girls in school, saying that they contribute immensely in trying to address the issue of abuse amongst women, and also issues of economic exclusion of the youth were raised quite prominently in these deliberations. But to get a feel of what are some of the important factors which have been raised by the youth, I'm now joined by Andile Mthombeni, who is the co-chair of this very first conference taking place today. Andile, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Puti.
Yeah. What are some of the apex issues that you have raised to government?
So first of all, the conference came about in a vision that we wanted to bring together policymakers and government bodies, government ministers, deputy ministers, together with the youth and civil society and NGOs, because most of the times we have seen conferences that discuss youth issues, particularly the AIDS conference that's coming up in the next couple of days, but they often neglect to address together with the youth. The youth voice is always silenced. So the idea for this youth conference, this AIDS Youth Conference, was to get youth together with the policymaker, the people who make decisions on our behalf, and we tell them our issues, and we tell them some of the interventions that we'd like to see from them and what we think would work for us, but so that they can also work together hand in hand with us as active participants in decision making for our lives.
Take us through some of the very important points that you raised.
So the conference brought together young people from all over the country, from people represented from all the provinces. It brought young people from the 50 TVET colleges. It brought young people from the 26 universities. It also brought young people from the high schools as well. It was more than 4,500 young people that were represented here, and so many issues were highlighted and raised. And one of the major issues that was raised in this conference was the issue of gender-based violence and sexual harassment within our institutions, where lecturers are asking for sex for marks, marks for sex, and so many issues that power dynamics, but particularly rolling around gender-based violence, the killings of young black women, and us being vulnerable to HIV and AIDS because we are in relationships where we are vulnerable and we cannot negotiate safe sex. So those issues came out a lot, but also the issues of LGBT communities where they're being neglected. They raise their issues and concerns, particularly in rural institutions, but their vice chancellors or their principals don't take those issues really seriously, and thus the young people brought those issues here so that the government people can hear from the horse's mouth, the youth themselves, so that when they go back to their offices, particularly the Department of Higher Education, can therefore make sure that they go to those institutions and hold those principals and chancellors accountable so that young people can feel safe in their institutions. But also obviously highlighting the issue, the biggest issue obviously in the country, the fact that 15 to 24 young people are getting infected, 2,500 of us every single week here in South Africa, new incidents of HIV infection. So that is really alarming, and that was raised, and young people are very concerned themselves as well. And one of the highlighted issues that young people actually put forward, that they insisted that we need youth-friendly health services, but we also need youth-friendly services within our campuses as well. And a lot of plethora issues came out: economic emancipation, economic empowerment, for example. And another key issue issue is that all of these issues that we are seeing, they are rooted in poverty. I mean, we just recently saw that 27.7% unemployment. So we can see unemployment rising, and majority of the people that are unemployed is the youth. Youth are getting their degrees, they are graduating, but they're not getting employed. So all of those issues came out. However, what we decided to do is that we highlighted all of those issues, summarized them, and put them in a pledge that we gave today. We gave that pledge to the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Mduduzi Manana, and the Deputy Minister of the Presidency, Mr. Budimanamela, so that they can take these youth issues, the issues that we have raised and highlighted here in this conference, back to the Presidency and say, this is what the young people are saying, this is what the young people want to be addressed by the government, and we hope that they will take that and we will hold them accountable. And I have that pledge here with me today, and they have their signatures. Everyone was watching. The young people saw them. The whole country saw them. We saw them sign, and now they need to implement and discuss a way forward, and we'll hold them accountable.
But obviously not surprising is the fact that free education for the vulnerable was on top of that list.
Yes, so free education obviously again links to poverty, and one of the pledge implementation, which is pledge number 1, is that we need implementation of free education for the economically vulnerable, because the government is always hiding the fact that we can't provide free education for all. That's impossible. So we are saying we need free education for the economically vulnerable, and that links to the HIV status, the financial status, the poverty. And once they implement that free education for the economically vulnerable, then it will lessen some of the burdens and the responsibilities that we carry as young people, and make us and put us at risk of some of these issues such as HIV and AIDS. And another pledge also that we put forward, the young people raised the issue of patriarchy. I mean, we have seen in the news the young women are being killed by their boyfriends and etc. And always the interventions always focus on empowering the women. Why didn't she leave? We need to empower girls to leave these relationships and not be in the relationships. Yes, we need those empowerment programs, but we need them to be implemented, but not only for the young women, but for the young men as well. The young men need to be taught about gender issues. They need to understand how to treat women and respect women. So those programs need not only to empower women, but to teach young boys and young men how to respect and treat women. But also another issue that was raised was patriarchy. Patriarchy also, we see it in our government. We see it in our policy makers. They're very patriarchal. It comes from the top. So one of the pledges is that government, they need to implement and put forward programs for themselves to address.
Okay, let me just, before I let you go, Andile, any time frame that you've given the government to address these issues?
We are giving the government 6 months. We are giving the government 6 months to put this pledge forward in the Presidency, to discuss it, to do something about it. And in 6 months, we demand some sort of feedback as to where we're going with the pledge points that we have put forward.
All right, that was Andile Mthombeni. Thank you very much for your time. We're out of time, unfortunately. But that is the end of the 3-day conference which took place here at Inkosi Albert Luthuli International Convention Center. The very first that highlighted issues facing the youth, and the youth saying that they want their voices to be heard and they want implementation, and they want it now. Well, it's back to Johannesburg.